Well, I want to take a moment, eventually the mic will be on, for everyone for coming. I think we promised more songs than we got to sing. Maynard sent me 7, but we didn't get started quite as early as I think we had planned, but that's all right. You would think so, yeah. You think they'd be in here going, come on, let's go. But I do want to thank you guys for coming. There's a lot of places that you guys could be today. You're choosing to spend your afternoon here, and I'm appreciative very much of that. This is the first workshop that we've put on, I think, since I've been here. And I guess depending on how today goes will depend on whether or not there are additional ones to come. On your way in this afternoon, there was a box with some papers beside them. These are questionnaires. Your name is optional, so if you want to say something mean and tell me never to do this again, you don't have to sign your name to it. If you want to get on my good side, I guess you can sign your name. But just kind of let us know your thoughts on this. So if you have to leave halfway through, make sure you pick one up and drop that off so that we can kind of know how to better serve. The goal of this afternoon's workshop is to really address the issue of evangelism. We want to be an evangelistic church, and one of the important things about outreaching is that when they get here, when people come to things that we invite them to, we want them to stick around. We want them to feel welcome. So we're going to deal with the very simple, yet very complex issue of welcoming guests and making people feel at home. And then after we take a short break, after we talk about all that, we're going to then move into actually inviting people. What does that look like? Let's start, though, in Matthew chapter 28. If you have your Bibles, I encourage you to flip over there. Matthew chapter 28. Jesus, right before he ascends into heaven, is speaking to his disciples. And in verse 19, he says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." This concept of going, I think, is what we often focus on when we think about evangelism. We need to go somewhere. We need to go and evangelize the world. Where are some places we could go?
Across the street.
Across the street.
Our street.
Jumped ahead of me. Right? Where could we go?
Next door.
Next door. Across the street. Next door. Where else could we go?
Anywhere you are.
Anywhere you could go, right? The going is not actually the command. It's as you're going. The assumption is you're going places, right? You're going next door. You're going across the street. You're going somewhere around the world. The command is to make disciples, right? So how and where you go to make disciples is up to you. What are some ways we can go and make disciples? What are some of the ways?
Talk to your neighbor.
Talk to your neighbor.
We used to do a lot of vacation Bible schools in the summertime.
Yeah, programs like Vacation Bible School are ways that we can go. How else?
Support other people who can go.
Support others. Yeah.
Put up a food box.
Put up a food box. Right? There's all sorts of ways we can go. We can go in person. We can go digitally. We can go in print. We can go by ship, by boat, by plane, by airwaves. There's all sorts of ways that we can go. The going is not the important part. It's assumed. Right? So our minds can determine how we go. Now, when it comes to the issue of evangelism, there's normally 2 ways that we can kind of define evangelism. There is broad net evangelism, and then there is individual evangelism, one-on-one evangelism. We're going to be talking about broad net evangelism and what that looks like to go out and to reach as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, with the opportunity for them to come to know Christ. See if I'm missing anything here. Now, what's the problem? Well, let's start with the positive. What is the positive aspect of wide net evangelism? What's the benefit?
Reach a lot of people.
You reach a lot of people. What else? What's one of the benefits of wide net evangelism?
It's probably not personal.
It's not personal.
You don't have to do it all yourself, because if it's wide net, you have a group.
Right, so you have camaraderie, you have a group of people. What are some other advantages to wide net evangelism?
Locale.
Location,
Name recognition.
name recognition, right? We're that church down on South Taft Avenue. Right, we got that nice big bright food box out there. We're the ones that give out the coats and the clothing.
Well, it's basically broad net marketing. They're basically not only name recognition, but a lot of times people don't know that you're there. Whether you're the greatest Mexican restaurant in Loveland or whatever, they don't know. They don't even know. Oh, I never knew you were here. So it's getting information out to reduce the ignorance of your location and your existence.
Right. It's broad marketing, right? And honestly, a lot of the things that I've watched this week leading up to this was a lot of guys who have landscaping businesses. This is how I do my marketing. Okay, like apparently that is the market, at least online, who are talking about some of these kind of things that we're going to be talking about today. So it's marketing, right? Now, what's the flip side? What's the negative? What's the downside to wide net evangelism?
Well, the first thing is it's not as personal.
Right.
So it's very impersonal.
It's not personal.
Expensive.
It's expensive. Right? You got to print up all the flyers that you're going to give out. You got to pay something like Facebook or Google to get your name in front of people in the digital marketplace. Follow-up is challenging.
It doesn't fulfill the command of making disciples for
Yeah.
early years.
Yeah. And that was one of the interesting things. As I was looking through, it's like, okay, I need to find a passage on wide net evangelism. Uh-oh. Right? We often think of inviting people to church. Right? That there's a personal element sometimes to that, but that's kind of a wide net. Come and hear the preacher tell me how to evangelize. Come and evangelize my friend. Does that work? Sometimes. Is it the best? No. We're looking for something that's quick, that gets our name out there, that catches the seeker. Right? That's what we're looking for and what we're talking about when it comes to wide net evangelism. Let's look over at Luke. At Luke chapter, so even the preachers will use his Bible. Luke chapter 10, starting in 1 through 3 here. Luke 10, 1 through 3. And after this, the Lord appointed 72 others and sent them out ahead of him, 2 by 2, into every town and place by which he himself was about to go. And he said to them, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers or the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest field. Go on your way, and behold, I am sending you out like lambs amidst wolves." This is probably the closest thing to wide net evangelism I could find. There's several principles here that I think is worthy of our time and our attention to talk about really quick here. What are some principles you see in this passage?
Well, it says 2 by 2.
2 by 2.
But when you see 2 people come into your door, what do you assume?
Well, if you dress like
That
me,
they're Jehovah's Witnesses. So that's why both sides of the streets are nice instead of 2 by 2.
right.
You're still 2 by 2, but you're spread out.
And we will get into the benefit of going as a pair, right? There's safety in numbers. There's a better return for your labor. It's less conspicuous. What's this weirdo doing at my door? Oh, there's 2 people, canvassing the neighborhood. Let's call the cops on them.
Well,
Right?
the harvest is, I think for me, the main point has always been the harvest is plentiful. In other words, Jesus isn't saying, well, you're looking for a needle in a haystack here.
Yeah.
But you're looking for a bale of hay in a pile of hay.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. The harvest is plentiful. What else? What are some of the principles that we see here?
Well, if I may.
Yep.
Well, the laborers are few. For me, Jesus is basically, to me, it's almost a criticism of the fact that there isn't more people doing this.
Yeah.
He's saying, you guys, look at this harvest out here, and you've only got 2 guys harvesting it. Why isn't there hundreds of people or thousands? So that there's a need for people to make an effort
Yeah.
to go do the harvest.
Yeah. And what are we seeking to harvest?
Souls?
Souls. So that we can have numbers and we can feel good about ourselves?
No.
No, why?
Because
So people can be saved
that's the
from
command.
their sin so that they don't face eternal damnation when they face that throne and say, well, I was a good person. I didn't know. Right? We want as few people to be in that situation as possible. We want to bring people to know Christ. We want them to have a relationship with Christ. It's not because we want to feel better about ourselves and we need to fill the pews and then I can feel like I've accomplished something. That's not the goal. The goal is to save souls. We have a message of life. Right? Are you ashamed of the gospel of Christ?
Next
Well, I
week's
can
class.
tell you that those of you who are here, I don't think the answer is yes. I think the answer is no. I'm not ashamed. Right? And I want my neighbors, I want my neighborhood to know about the kingdom of God. Right? That's why you're here. Right? Now there's one other aspect, the importance of going, the need for workers. That's why you're here this afternoon. There's one other element of this that I think is really important that we remember. Prayer. Prayer. I know a lot of people at Sunset, where I went to school, who had alarms that went off every day at 9:38 and at 10:02. Why? Because it's Luke 10:2 and Matthew 9:37. Pray to the Lord of the harvest to send out workers. And every day their alarm would go off and they would hit their knees and they would pray to God that God would send workers. Workers. It's important not only that we be praying though for workers, but that we be praying about the work that we're going to do. We need to be praying for our community. We need to be praying about the events that are upcoming, that we're in the process of planning, that we're trying to figure out what to do and when to do it and how to do it. We need to be praying about these things. We need to be on our knees asking the Father to bless the harvest and to send people our way, that when people receive a flyer or we end up talking with somebody, that they're receptive to the gospel message, to the relationship of disciple making. Prayer is one of the important things that I hope you walk away from today with. That as we look at the importance of evangelism, that you will think about the importance of prayer, of praying, of asking God to bless our efforts. All right, so the goal of this afternoon is to address this issue of evangelism. And to some extent, we want to shut the back door. All right, we had a number of guests who joined us today. We have a number of people who have been attending on a regular basis who have not yet placed membership, who are in need of community. Right? The goal of today, in a lot of ways, is to shut that back door, to make the outreach effort that we're seeking to do this summer to be effective. That's really the goal. And when it comes to this issue of being a welcoming congregation, let me preface everything that I'm about to say and everything we're about to talk about with the fact that I believe we are a very welcoming and loving church. And it's only right that the Loveland Church would be a loving church. Amen? Right? We're a loving church. And often I am having to wait my turn to greet guests who then get by me because then I talk to somebody else and I have a hard time getting back as they're running to the door. Because I got to get away from these friendly people. Right? But we want to work on being a more friendly church. We want to make sure that we're capable of greeting people at the doors. That we're able to greet people as they come to an event that we have, whether it be the coat drive or a community picnic or a youth event of some sort. We want to make sure that we're greeting people. Let me give you some statistics. What do you think are some of the key reasons that somebody chooses to attend a church? Somebody who is unchurched, who has never been to church or doesn't go to church often, what is one of the number one reasons that somebody would choose that church? They felt welcome. What else? They were invited.
Well, I would say, in addition to being, they felt welcome because they were acknowledged.
They were acknowledged.
somebody acknowledged that, hey, this is somebody we don't know. Hi, I'm Victor, what's your name?
Right.
Showed
Yeah,
interest.
interest was shown. What other things do you think causes somebody to decide to come again to a church?
I was just thinking about how people choose one. Let's say that you're out there and you've decided that you've got bad habits or that something has struck you or whatever. And how are you going to go around about to find a place to go? You know, your
Get a-
girlfriend?
Get a hot chick to take you.
Just
Well-
ordinary proximity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We might
that
need
was
a
the church
singles
closest
group
to
for
me.
that.
Right? That was the church that was closest to me. I drove by that church before and noticed that people were there. It's the first one I came to.
Michael, let's not forget, if I may, that some people are seeking,
Yeah.
that, like I was.
Yeah.
And I came to this church and I had a hot chick with me, but,
And that's where I'm
But-
going.
but
How do you
I could've-
choose when you're looking?
but I could have just as easily, if this church, somebody had, you know, if I had felt unwelcome, if I had not, people had not taken interest in me, because some people felt I was a wolf among sheep, but anyways, that's another story.
What is gonna pique their interest to come here?
Right. But that comes down to the marketing wide net that we're talking about, right outside of discipleship, which is what we're actually called to, and we'll get to hopefully at another.
That's
Yeah.
part of what the coat drive does.
Right, but that's part of what the coat drive does. It shows us who we are, and we have people who have come to this church because of our coat giveaways. Because we met their needs. We showed them how much we cared. Right? Now, here's the interesting thing. As we've talked about this, the one thing I haven't heard is, oh, but that preacher that they have there is excellent. Or they have a great children's ministry. Or the music that they have was so good.
What about the teacher?
You know, they have a good program. They have hot chicks there. Those were not the reasons that we listed for why people come back. Here's the statistics. In choosing a church, 90% chose because of the minister. That was a reason that they came. You know why they stayed? 90% or 38% because of the minister. The drop is what I want to identify there. They started out 90%. I like the minister. Why did they keep coming? Not because of the minister. That dropped down to the 38th percentile.
It's because these other things we just talked about were being ignored.
Yeah. Worship and music style, 11%. You know why they kept coming? Music, 14%. So it goes up a little bit. It's one of those things over time that's important. It's one of the reasons why I wanted us to do some singing today. Friendliness of membership, 49% chose to come back because of that. You know who chose to stay for friendliness? 49%. It is a constant. Influences that come around for someone who comes and sticks around and begins to attend regularly. A welcoming church, 66%. Being greeted by a congregant, 82%. Being personally greeted by the minister, 84%. Visited at least 4 times, and they decided to stick around at 46%. When I looked at the statistics, being a greeting, welcoming, friendly church is one of the most important things we can do. Now, doctrine, absolutely, that's important, right? The Presbyterian church could be a very greeting church. I might be there for, some funeral or some wedding or something like that, but I'm not going to go back because I disagree with their doctrine, right? But that's somebody who has a very deep history within church, within Christianity, right? So when we're thinking about somebody who has no connection to the church and they're just shopping, being a friendly church is one of the number one things we can do to keep people coming back. Thoughts and comments as we think through that?
I've had several people ask me about if we have a lot of youth. I've invited them. I remember one lady at the restaurant we went to, we got into a discussion because of what happened with some other people there. But then she asked me about it. She said they're looking for a place to go. She asked me about if we had a lot of them. don't have a lot of young people.
But if they would come, you'd have more.
That's right. That's right. We had a family
I have
visiting
4
with us
kids.
today, brought the class up to 4. We would have only had 1, and on other Sundays, we have, 4 or 5 in there. So that would have brought us up to a really good class size. Right now,
Have a bigger table.
yeah, had to bring in another table. Those are good problems to have, right? And that is one of the challenges,
Yes.
right? It's hard to build upon what you don't have, right? So as we're thinking about marketing, it's important that we be thinking about who we're trying to market to. Well, bring us back also to the prayer thing, right? It's something that Jim said, I think it was last Sunday. We need to be praying that God would send us young families, people who are able to be teachers, people who want to be involved, right? We need to be praying for those families, that they would come and be a part of us, that they would enjoy their time with us, that our location would be beneficial, and that they would stick with us long enough to get some of these programs that we once had, that we want to have again, off the ground. Right? But when we're introducing people around the building, let's also not be detrimental about it. Be like, we don't have a lot of kids here. We don't have a lot of families here. Let's not bring attention to the things that we're lacking in at the moment that we're looking to grow in. Right? These are things we want to grow in. To my knowledge, we're not running people out of these areas. Right? That's not our problem. As a congregation, we don't have a problem because some kid is speaking up. Because some kid doesn't know how to sit still yet. And because we're going over and saying, you really need to keep your kid quiet. That's not the problem that we have as a congregation. We love that. We love it when a family is learning to teach their child how to behave in church. We understand that's a learning process, right? And if you have a problem with that, come talk to me, and I'll talk to you about how we have to be patient with families like that. But I don't think that's our problem, right? We're not running off young families. So let's not bring attention to a problem of a lack of people.
Well, here's something else we're not doing, we're not talking about. We're not saying, hey, to a new person just walk in the door, let me give you the 5-step plan for your salvation. In other words, you don't hammer people with church, too much information, too much doctrine, because they're like, okay, and these people are fanatics, or whatever.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
not, we can take care of those problems. Just the same thing with the children. That's a problem we can address, but not if they don't come back.
Right, right. No, absolutely.
Michael, one thing for some, we have looked at many churches and have lived many different places in our marriage and looked, but I think along with the friendliness also becomes you feel comfortable there. When you walk in the building, you feel comfortable. There's a comfortability there. And not everywhere when you walk in, you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
We in our marriage have chose not to go to some churches because it just had a weird feeling.
Yep.
And I don't know how to describe it, but we didn't feel comfortable, that it didn't have, so beyond just the friendliness, and yes, the friendliness is, I think, number one, but there's also a comfortability
Yes.
that you want people to feel when they come, if they feel welcomed, they feel like, hey, I can sit in these seats, this is enjoyable,
Yes.
that comfortability.
Yes. And that's what we're going for with friendliness. We want to make people feel like family, right? As I was talking to Alyssa about this, she's like, when I was growing up, her home congregation, when she was growing up, had a number of issues. They kind of were hard on ministers and had some issues to kind of grow through. And at one point, they were like, you know what, we're going to check out some of the other churches in town. And there was one church they really wanted to plug into, and they really felt like they wanted to go to, but she was just not welcome by the congregation, by the youth group, right? They kind of hung around after church and kind of were waiting to maybe be invited out to dinner or something, look for that connection. Nobody did that, right? So they went back to a church that, they loved dearly, but had some issues, and they just, pushed through with, family, right? Instead of going with this other church that probably was a lot healthier and maybe would have helped them grow more spiritually, right? They weren't friendly.
So
I thought you had a comment, Nancy.
When we first moved here, and we heard this from Fort Collins, what needs to happen in a new member's life is get 9 friends in their first year. Have you ever heard that before?
Not that number, but the concept of needing
And I'm
those
thinking
connections.
most of us who are here today are not here for that only reason. The bulletin board I put out there talks about faith, friendship, fellowship, and family. That's what we're looking for, is all 4 of those aspects. And probably those of us who are here, if we didn't have one friend, we'd probably still be here.
Yeah.
But
But we're also, and here's where, okay, so we're trying to get to this issue of feeling comfortable, right? Of being a friendly church that feels comfortable. That's what we're going to talk about first. Then we'll take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about wide net evangelism when it comes to outreach. Okay, so that's the goal of the day. So let's deal with who we're talking about, right? Because Angie makes an interesting point. When we think about ourselves having a walk with the Lord, right? When I think about my wife and her family and the church that they attended growing up, they were committed to the Lord. They went to a church that sometimes was drudgery and had a lot of problems, not because they didn't love them, but because their commitment to the Lord was greater than the difficulty of being in that family, maybe, unhealthy family dynamic of that congregation. But who are we talking about when we have somebody who comes to a community cookout, or they come to a coat giveaway, or they come in on Wednesday or Sunday morning? Who are we thinking about when we're thinking about our guest?
Well,
Who are they?
They're a stranger.
They're a stranger.
And not part of the church family.
They very well may not be part of a church family.
Michael, if I may add scripture to this discussion, remember what Paul talks about when he talks about do not show favoritism to those that are more well dressed. This is, I think, and I think this is kind of what Michelle says. What I think happens is I call it the status quo church, where they have their little clique. They don't want it. They don't want the boat to rock. Oh, that guy's not wearing the kind of clothes we're wearing. Just as an example,
Yep.
they're not wearing the kind of clothes we're wearing. So we'll put them on the floor in front, right? That's what Paul talks about. Don't sit the guy on the floor. Give him the best seat in the house. And that's the kind of comfort that we wanted to espouse upon our new people and our strangers.
Yeah, welcome to our church. I notice you're not wearing a tie. It's really not a big deal, but here's a tie. Go put that on in the background, right? We want to avoid that kind of action, right? When we're thinking about our guest who's coming in, never been to church, not been to church in a long time, traveling through, just moved to the area. Those are kind of the 4 people who come in.
Well, there's a difference though of who comes on Sunday morning and who comes to the coat drive.
Yes.
They are seeking at some point, some way. Coat drive, they may be, the only thing they're seeking is get a coat, let's get out of here before
Right.
they convince us to come to church.
Right. So and you're right, the setting very much kind of depends on the audience. But here's what I would say also, and you're free to disagree with me on this. I think it is easier to begin with the understanding and the assumption that somebody walking through the door for the first time that we have never seen before, has never been to church or doesn't go to church often, and then to learn through the process of getting to know them that they're passing through, that they go to church regularly at a Church of Christ in Tennessee or in Texas, and then to realize that we're brothers, to come up to that level of we're family, than it is to assume that the person coming in is family and understands everything that's going on and is going to feel at home, and then come down to, oh, you've never been to church before. Right? So my argument for us is that when we're thinking about first-time guests, assume that they haven't been to church in a long time, that they're very uncomfortable with the situation, and it's our job to make them feel at home. And then in the process of that normal interaction of assuming that, we then learn where they're at, and then we're able to have even more points of connection with them.
Right, because what you just did, if you would have said that to them, oh, you've never been to church before. Guess what they're thinking? Okay, I'm out of here.
Right.
This is already uncomfortable enough, now it really got uncomfortable,
Right.
right? That's what's gonna happen.
Yeah. But if you walk into a church, you're driving, you're on a trip to Nebraska, right? You're visiting a church, and you're treated like you've never been to church before, right? You're greeted with that hospitality of, let me tell you about what's going to happen, let me kind of walk you around. You're going to be like, okay, well, this is an evangelistic-minded church. You're going to be okay with that,
Right.
right? So there's going to be a little bit more leeway that a Christian's going to have if they're greeted like that than a first-time guest who we want to be very accommodating to and make them feel at home. Well, they don't. Let me see if I have this. I know I have this written down somewhere. I don't remember where, but anyway, basically the concept was, I don't care if they agree with us, but I want them to understand what's going on. I want them to leave having felt like they knew what was happening. You don't have to agree with us, right? But somebody who walks in and they're like, oh, there's no piano. No, we just prefer a more simple form of worship. We don't want the focus to be upon the external. We want it to be upon the heart. We want to worship together. We don't have a choir. It's not about how you sound. We want people to leave, even if they disagree, we want them to leave understanding what's happening and why it happened. We want them to feel like they understood the situation at hand, right? Now, let's put ourselves in the mindset of the person we're greeting. Put yourself as the first time you've ever gone to an opera. First time you've ever gone to a Broncos game. The first time you've ever gone to a high-class dinner fundraiser. Some place that you've never been where you're going to feel a little bit out of place. That's what you need to assume a first-time guest is going to be feeling like. I don't know where the bathrooms are. I don't know where the classrooms are. I don't know what the order of worship is. I don't know what is expected when it comes to finding a seat. Right? I don't know if I'm dressed appropriately. I feel like I stand out like a sore thumb. Right? So if we assume that that's where somebody's at, we want to then overcome those obstacles. We want them to feel at home. We want them to feel comfortable. We want them to feel like family. Not just like a guest, right? We don't want to roll out a red carpet and announce to everybody, hey everybody, we have a visitor. Right? Now I'm singled out and I'm embarrassed and I don't want to come back. But if they feel like they're family, this is my long-lost cousin so-and-so. I didn't even know we were related, but we just talked and we found out that we are. Right? Let me take you around to show you introduce you to everybody and let you make some friends. You see the difference? We want people to feel like they're family. So we need to think about what it would take for somebody to come back to an event. Right?
And that's the whole point right there, Michael. That's the end game. What's the end game? What's the goal? There's always got to be a goal.
Right.
To get them to come back.
Right.
Not to indoctrinate them, not to go through a musical dissertation of why we don't have musical instruments, why we use hourglass things right now. I mean, all that's for communion. That's not the goal.
Right.
That's just, then we start to get into what's called analysis paralysis, and then they're just like, forget it. It's too complicated.
Yeah, you might want to be going and have you visited a lot of churches? We're a little different than some churches. Are you interested in finding out why? Don't we know what's going on?
Yeah. Never been to a Church of Christ before.
That's right.
Right? When you think about Mark chapter 16, where's it at? No, I'm thinking about Matthew. What we read earlier, Matthew 26 or 28. Go and make disciples, baptizing them, teaching them. There's an order, right? You begin by making disciples. That's friendship. That's making them feel at home. Discipleship is walk along with me. Right? Then it's a training up. Let me teach you the gospel. Baptizing them, bringing them into the family, and then teaching them to observe all things. Right? There's an order to it.
It's a process.
It is. I want you to think about what it would take for somebody who walks up to you, maybe at your place of work. Maybe you run into them as they're spreading pamphlets. Hi, I'm from the Democratic Party. Let me tell you about the people who are running in this area. What is it going to take for them to even let them talk to you about their perspective?
They need to be Republican.
What? Right? Because we're not even going to give them the time of day. We have to get ourselves into the mindset of what is it going to take for somebody to for me to give them the chance to let them have a discussion, not an argument, a discussion about a different perspective. And it's going to begin with this aspect of a relationship. Right? It can't begin with, while the Republicans are evil. Right? I'm going to shut you down right there. Right? And I'm not saying you have to be a Republican to be at church. That's not what I'm saying. Right? I know I'm going to hit the largest demographic by going that direction. But the point stands. Right? When you think about a political persuasion, a belief system, I am from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. What's it going to take for you to give me a chance to change your perspective? I am from the Blue Book. I got the Blue Book. Aliens are actually what we call angels, and we need to ascend to a higher plane of existence. Let me stop you right there, right? It's going to take something more than a pamphlet or an invitation to get me to change my perspective.
Also, Christopher talked about relatability.
It's friendship, it's relatability, it's making them feel at home. From that perspective, we can then begin to have that dialogue as friends.
You might have something that you have handwritten that is not very long and say, this is personally from my heart to yours. Something they can read in 3.5 minutes or less.
Well, a visitor walks in for a reason.
Right. Yeah, so when we're thinking about somebody on Sunday morning, Wednesday night, they're seeking. We already have a seeker. Right? And kind of what Chris talked about today. Right? Is that working for you? They kind of come to a place. No.
I'm glad
It's
you're
not
here.
working
How
for
can
me.
we help? You know, what
Right.
is it?
Do they need judgment? No. You know, they walk in and they're dressed awkwardly. They're obviously struggling with their identity. Is that what we need to then begin with? Do we begin there? No.
You're not going to talk to anybody about Christ if you disrespect them.
Right. Right. So one of the goals that we need to have is make people feel well. Right? Now, this is one of those things that we have to be mindful of as well when it comes to security. Right? Somebody comes in and they're dressed oddly. Right? In this society, do we need to be concerned because somebody walks in and they got knee pads on and they're dressed all in black and they got a big trench coat and it's hot outside and they're... Yeah, we need to be concerned. But how do we greet somebody? Let's say they are actually a threat. And I bring that up because we've had a gentleman in here who was just passing through. He looked a little suspicious. Let's say his plan was not, but let's say that this proverbial person's plan was to come in and just blow the place up. As Christians, somebody who's going to heaven, who's concerned about their soul, what is our number one goal? His soul. Try to reach him. He comes in with a
Everybody all
plan.
at once.
He plans to come in
Surround
and
him.
cause a problem. And our reaction, wise as serpents, or shrewd as serpents, innocent as doves, we come up and we welcome him. We greet him warmly. We get to know who he is. Best case scenario, nothing happens.
And we're shaking his hand all the time, both of them.
Both hands. Let me walk you around, right?
Funny name for it, so.
But the opposite is also, right? We isolate, we look at them in the corner. We affirm every suspicion and evil intent that he has, right? So we have to be a welcoming church.
He becomes right.
Right. So I'm not saying we don't have to take precautions. I'm not saying that we're not as shrewd as serpents. But I am saying that we seek to be as innocent as doves when it comes to being loving. Because if I'm going to lose my life, I want to lose my life communicating the love of Christ.
Absolutely.
Right? That's what I want to lose my life over, is loving people.
It's hard to threaten somebody that's going to heaven.
Yeah. No, it is. Right? So we need to be a congregation that is loving. So how do we help them feel comfortable? We're dealing here with feeling. It's important that we understand that. We're dealing with feeling. We're not dealing with reality necessarily. We're dealing with feeling. A lot of people, I'm sure, come through our church, our doors, and they leave not feeling welcome. And we can say, well, you came in right as church was beginning. You sat on the back row, and as soon as we said amen, you got up and you walked out. What do you mean you didn't feel welcome? You didn't give us a chance. Right? But they leave feeling unwelcome. So we need to understand that we're dealing with emotion. Are we responsible ultimately for somebody's emotion? No. But can we facilitate emotion? Right? What do you do on the anniversary? Right? You sweep her off her feet. You take her out for dinner. You make sure that you roll out the carpet. Right? We know how to make people feel good. Right? Now, I'm not saying we be manipulative in any way, but I'm saying that we know how to make people feel loved. Are we responsible ultimately? No. But we can do our very best to do so and to help people. Body language. Right? Our body language communicates a lot. If I'm fidgety, what does that communicate?
I got someplace I gotta be.
I got someplace I got to be. I'm uncomfortable. I'm nervous. I don't know what's going on.
This is taking way too much time.
Yeah. What does this communicate?
You ain't reaching me,
I'm
brother.
shut down. I'm defensive. I'm pulled back. Right? Open, comfortable, relaxed body language is one of those things that we can do. And we have to read body language. Now, this is not always easy. This is something that comes with time and practice. Right? Especially in today's society. Is everyone going to be open to a handshake? No. Can we offer? Sure. Yeah. And we need to be able to read that body language to realize, no, they're not comfortable with that. That's okay. My goal is not to make them feel welcome by shaking their hand. Right? That's not going to help. Right?
You just hug, right?
And coming up and hugging somebody, right? And being right up in their business, right? They're going to feel uncomfortable. Right? Body language
It's a hot girl.
is important. Right? We need to be comfortable. We need to be open. Right? Open body language. Greeting people. A smile. Right? I obviously often wear a mask around here at the moment. But you can still see a smile through the eyes. Right? You can see a genuine greeting. Right? It's great to see you today. Versus, oh, hi. Right? Or a scowl. You know, what are you? You're suspicious. Right? That's not what we're after. Right? Yeah, walking around like shade, right? My future's too bright to deal with you. That kind of body language is not helpful. Right? A warming, sincere, open body language, a handshake, a high five, a fist bump, whatever it is, it's great to see you today. That's important. It begins there with that first impression. One of the things that I couldn't back up by any of the research I did, but something that somebody else within the churches at whole mentioned, one of the ministers I watched on YouTube said that most people decide whether they're going to come back or not in the first 5 minutes. They never even get to the sermon. They never even get to the music. They decide whether they're going to come back or not within the first 5 minutes. Those first impressions are important. And it begins by am I going to ignore you? Right? I'm too busy with this conversation to notice a guest. Or do I drop everything and say, hold on a second. I noticed you're here for the first time today. Right? I'm willing to put aside a friendship for a moment because I see somebody that needs to be greeted. We had somebody who came in on Wednesday night, 2 Wednesday nights ago, halfway through service. I felt so awkward. Right? They come in halfway through. I wasn't sure if I was about to be asked for benevolence or directions or what. But I made the assumption that they knew why they were there. Right? I walked over. I greeted her. I said, are you going to be joining us tonight? Right? She said, yes. Great. Get her a chair, get her a songbook, get her a Bible, tell her where we're at. Right? In the middle of everything. Right? It's important that somebody do that. If you don't see somebody doing that, you go and do it.
Michael, I would also suggest, great book written by Dale Carnegie is the sweetest sound to everybody is their own name. So immediately learning, hi, hey, I'm Victor, what's yours?
Yes.
Oh, hi, I'm Michael. Oh, Michael, and then repeat it. So you can try to remember. And if you can get them after the church service and say, hey, Michael, it's good to see you today, they'll be like, wow, that guy remembered my name. And it's the sweetest, and that really is a warming, a comfortable position to put people into, that you thought enough to remember their name.
Yeah. Hey, you in gray shirt. It was good to see you today. It doesn't quite have the same effect of, hey, Victor, we're grateful that you were here today.
And one thing too about knowing visitors, if you got to know who's here regularly.
Yes.
And
Right.
I don't know everybody, actually. There's a lot of people I see, I don't talk too much.
Yeah, we have a tendency to greet the same people every
Right.
Sunday,
A
don't we?
lot of times I'll say, I've seen you, but I don't know who you are.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. And maybe being a friendly, welcoming congregation begins on some Sundays, not with greeting the guest that's never been here before, but it begins by greeting somebody that I just don't know a lot about you. Right? And getting to know them. Right?
It's good practice.
Yeah, no, it is. So ultimately what we're seeking to do is treat them like family. Right? We want to treat them like family. Right? Get to know who they are. Make those connections. Let them talk about themselves.
So you better get yourself back here next week.
Let's not be too demanding, but let's be inviting.
Fire.
Right?
Michael, something I was thinking about because of the people that I work with, I have a few people that are just now coming back into society. And with that comes a lot of anxiety when they're out and they're going anywhere new, let alone with people that, where there's going to be a lot of people. So I think we need to be just thoughtful about that we have, COVID has made things different. And when it takes a lot for some of these people to just walk through the door because they have, for some reason, for different reasons, they have anxiety, and maybe they've never had anxiety before, but they have it now, and this is new to them, that feeling, and they get anxious, and when they walk even into a grocery store, let alone a church. So I think we need to be thoughtful about that. And then a very easy way with the handshake thing is now it's very common to say, "Are you a handshaker? Can I shake your hand?" And I think that it also is a very friendly statement to people.
Yes.
Because we're respecting their boundaries. I'm not a hugger. There were 2 men in my congregation. They were lovely, awesome, wonderful men. Nothing was wrong with these 2 men. They weren't creepy. They were wonderful people. But every time I'd walk into a church, when I was a little girl, they would hug me, and it made me uncomfortable. And now, as most of you know, I'm a martial artist. I speak, and I'm not a hugger. I don't do that, and I take ownership of that now.
Yeah.
But some people won't take ownership, but they don't want to hug or they don't want to handshake. So I think it, as being a friendly church and a church that we want people to be comfortable in, ask.
Yeah.
Just say, hey, are you a handshaker? Are you a hugger? Are you a, and if they say no, say no problem, and just, but that's a part of making people comfortable.
No, it is. And this comes down to a generational thing as well in parenting style to some extent, right? It was common, especially for my parents' generation, go and give so-and-so a hug, right? Come here, give me a hug,
Kiss
right?
them on the cheek.
That assertive, this is what you will do, and then you have a child who doesn't want to do something like that, and now you've made them disobedient, right? What we're being trained now as parents is to ask, right? Even when it's something like mealtime, right, with my girls, right? Do you want to come up to the table now, or would you like to come in 1 minute? That's an option. Now, there's an option with a limitation, right? But there's still options. It shows a lot of respect when we actually come up to somebody and say, hey, can I shake your hand? Asking permission is very respectful, and that's true. So, 2 things I didn't have in my notes, and I'll be honest with this, and this is why a class setting is so beneficial to these kind of things. Name, getting people's name, memorizing name. Guys, I'm horrible with that. I've been here for almost 5 years. I still struggle with some of the regulars' names, right? I know you. I know things about you. I cannot remember.
My name's not Vince.
Vince's name, it's a struggle. But learn people's name, ask permission. Can I shake your hand? Right? Asking permission also goes around. So here's a couple things to say to guests that I think could be beneficial. Do not see these as a script. Okay? Make these yours. So these are some general things to discuss and to talk about. Welcome, we're glad you're here. Right? That's a general first-time greeting of somebody. Can I help you find your way around? Not, let me point you in the direction you need to go. Take them. Right? Take the time and go with them. Right? Actually walk them with you. And it's, once again, it's that asking permission. Can I show you around?
I made an impression this morning on Noah. When you brought the kids into class, Noah said, that's our preacher. He brought the kids up here. It really made an impression on him.
I shook Maurice's hand.
So walking people to where they're going to go. Right? Can I show you around? Right? And feel free to kind of point out things along through the building as you're walking. Oh, our gym's down that direction. We have luncheons there on Wednesday nights. We have our soup side. Pointing things out around the building as you walk. Getting to know them. Right? What's your name?
Well, and as silly as it sounds, knowing where the bathrooms are,
Yes.
I can't tell you, several congregations at the Church of Christ we visited through our travels, and I'm ending up outside across the street going, where is the bathroom?
It's an old Texas Church of Christ. It's actually right behind the Baptist store.
Right.
You make sure you go before church.
Right. So that's useful.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
for me.
Definitely. Where are you from? Right? What are you gaining out of asking something like that? Are they local? Passing through?
Get them talking.
Get them talking about themselves? Oh, we're from, so-and-so. We go to church, at the Church of Christ
Okay,
on so-and-so, right? All of a sudden, they went from a guest who's never been in a church before, who are feeling very uncomfortable, to somebody who maybe, has been going to church all their lives, right? And they know their way around the building like this very comfortably, right? You're getting to know them. Tell me your story. That's an interesting conversation starter, especially at one of our events. Tell me your story, right? Where do you come from? What's your history? Right? I'm asking about you. Have you ever been to a Church of Christ before? Here's a good one. Let me introduce you to so-and-so, especially as you find out interests. Oh, I'm from New York. Oh, well, let me introduce you to so-and-so who used to live in New York. Right? Oh, you were in the military. Well, let me introduce you to so-and-so. Let me introduce you to our minister. Right? Taking them around. Make them your guest. Make them your family member. Right? Would you do the honor of sitting with my family? Inviting them to sit with you. Right? You took up a position at the door to greet guests, and now you're done for the day. You have your guest. Right? Let me show you around. Will you sit with me and my family? Let me make you feel at home. Would you like to go out to lunch with me and my family? Right? And maybe that's one of those areas where we go up to the elders and say, hey, my family would love to be welcoming, but we don't have the budget to invite somebody out for dinner. Could we get a little help? That might be something, to go to one of those Tuesday nights and get shot down, but, have a nice conversation with the elders. Whatever that. Right? But inviting people out to lunch, right? Maybe even making a hole in your family budget to, take another family out once a month to somewhere, right? Now, once again, we're coming out of a pandemic. Not everyone's going to be comfortable eating out. Not everyone's comfortable eating in a large group, right? But you can ask. I'll take a rain check on that. We're not eating out right now, but thank you for the invitation.
When I take my mouth out to eat, my teeth out to eat, they don't work for me.
Here's one to ask after service sometime. Did you understand everything that was done and everything that was said? Or do you have any questions about what happened today? Right? People may have been in the church for a long time. You guys do communion every Sunday? Why was there a guy speaking in tongues at the beginning of communion? Right? Why was there a Spanish speaker, right, during the communion? People might have questions, right? We're a very middle-of-the-road traditional Church of Christ. I don't think we're really one extreme or the other, but there are some things that we might do that some others don't, right? Why aren't you guys passing the trays right now, right? Now, those are coming from a position of knowledge, but there might be some questions. Maybe they've never been to church. What's with the, I didn't understand communion. Why is that a thing? Right? Making sure that people leave, whether they agree with us or not, they leave feeling like they understood what happened and why it happened. Gone through a few lines. Any thoughts or questions?
Michael, one of the things you have to ascertain right away is a lot of people will come into church and they're making the beeline to the door is what they're comfortable with. It doesn't mean that they don't like it. It doesn't mean that they hate it.
Yep.
It's just that that's the second. So, maybe all you get out of them is their name and where they're from, and then they're gone. But they see you talking to other people, and so they can tell. It takes them a while to warm up, so read that quickly.
And that's one of those difficult things to figure out, right? There are people who are very much shy and introverted, right? And especially with the pandemic, it may be very uncomfortable for some to walk in, sit down in a large group, and then they're done with social interaction, right? So gauging, because to be too friendly is also harmful, right? So maybe it's hey, can I walk you out to your car? I'd like to get to know you a little bit, right? I see you need to leave. Can we get some space, in the great outdoors? Can we get outside and chat? Or maybe simply waving, right? My lead-in for today, I forgot it, right? I asked Susanna, how do you say hi? Hi! Right? Class dismissed, right? That friendliness, that loving, just enthusiastic. And maybe as somebody is making the beeline to their car, waving, right? Oh, it's so good to see you, right? Hope to see you next week. right? Because there have been people who have been here, come on a regular basis, who just make a beeline for the back door. Every week. And it's like, we'll never see them again. They didn't like the sermon, they didn't like the song, it was something, they just were turned off and they're gone. And then they're back the next week. You're scratching your head going, why are they back? I'm so grateful, but like, they ran out of here last week.
Well, after 10 years, I think it's common.
You know, so figuring out how to read that situation so that they feel welcome, and you begin to build that relationship. You know, maybe that, hi, that one week leads to a, catching them when they're back the next week. It's like, oh, it's great to see you again. I saw you for the first time last week. What's your name? Right? Where are you from? Right? And that doesn't have to be, oh, you're an out-of-towner. It can be, what's your history?
And Michael, I think we're forgetting one thing. When they leave, if we can catch them and try to remember their names, say, hey, besides all the things that you just suggested, we need to say, hey, may I invite you back next week? Same bat time, same bat channel.
Yeah.
Save you a seat.
That's right. Come back next week and sit with me and my family. Right? We'll save you a seat. Right? It's that kind of making people feel at home. Maybe you carry your own personal cards because you take up this concept of greeting people. You order 100 off Vistaprint or something, and it just got your phone number and your name, and say, hey, if you have any questions about today, feel free to give me a call. If you want to go grab coffee someday, give me a call. And you make that your personal mission. Right? It's as we're going, we make disciples. The way in which we do that is up to us.
And we have to remember the parable of the 4 soils, that we're planting seeds, and not, as frustrating as it can be to a lot of us, we can't control what soil they land in. We can only control what we just talked about, which is really getting the seed in the ground, and then after that we worry about watering it and fertilizing it. We got to get the seed in the right soil first, which is getting them to come back every week. Then we worry about the other stuff.
Right. Well, honestly, what we're talking about here is a matter of coming down and picking up some of the rocks and trying to toss them out of the soil. It's noticing that there might be some weeds on top and trying to reach in and maybe pull some of that weed so that we can begin to build that relationship. We've all known those people who are wonderful, upstanding members of society or of a community, right, like school, when they're with the right people. And as soon as they're with the wrong crowd, they fall down to that lower denomination. They're looking for those good connections. Maybe they're very uncomfortable. Maybe they're very quiet. Maybe they're very shy. One of the weirdest things in the universe to observe is 2 introverts desiring to have a conversation together. I know that because I'm married to one, and at heart, I am one. Right? Sometimes us extroverts need to adopt an introvert. Take them along with us. Right? Because we all desire connection.
And I'll make a plug as we're getting towards the end, sort of the end of today. With the Ladies' Day coming up in almost 2 weeks, we all should really try and invite someone, neighbor, friend, somebody. I mean, those are always great things to, otherwise it's all the same people just sitting together. Let's bring some friends and bring some people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, a couple more points. I'll let you guys have a quick break, and then we'll finish up with the door hanging. Don't clump, right? This comes back to that breaking of the friendship, the conversation every week that we want to catch up with, and greeting our guests. Right? Be okay with that. Say, hey, I got to catch somebody. Right? Be okay with that so that we can greet people. Don't clump. It's important that we make greeting our guests a priority. And sit towards the front. Right? I've been at a church, my home congregation, Garden City, Kansas. Me and Alyssa were visiting. We came in a little bit late because we're visiting family. Right? It's slow getting around in the mornings. And you had to walk all the way down to the front row. Past everybody. 15 minutes as church was beginning. Right? Here comes That preacher trainer that we trained up, and his wife and the family that, we supported, coming in 15 minutes late, right? I grew up under a pew. I'm comfortable in churches. My wife has spent many a dark day in a church building because, granddad was working. It's uncomfortable to walk down to the front. Let's make sure we leave some back pews for people who are guests who are coming in late so people can find a place to sit. I promise I don't fight, and I often do not call people out. Right? Okay, yeah, but, sit towards the front. All right. Seek for a way to connect to people, right? Guests with their hobbies, where they're from, with their background, things they enjoy. Try to make them feel at home. Try to make them feel welcome. Don't focus upon the doctrine. That comes in time. That comes with the relationship. Understand the limitation of the interaction, right? You're a greeter, you're a checker at a grocery store. Are you going to change your theology because you have a 2-minute conversation with somebody who's checking out? Probably not. But if you see that person several times and they invite you to church and they're very kind and friendly towards you and they ask about who you are and they remember your name, I might consider going to their church. Right? Think about it in terms of a theology that's difficult for you. We are kind of late. I wanted to get this done by 3. I have a whole other section. So we'll take a quick break here.
Say something real quick before you do that. All
Maybe
right,
we shouldn't.
I have a challenge for us then, because I'm just as bad as a lot of people. I challenge all of us here in every week for at least the next 2 to 3 weeks to go to somebody. We know, like Maynard was saying, I'm the same way. I know a lot of people in this congregation by face. I couldn't tell you where they lived and what their names are, which is sad, really, for me. So let's try to meet a new person. Each one of us meet at least one new person or 2 new people in the next couple of weeks, because this is how we start training ourselves. If we can't even know each other, how are we going to know some stranger that just walked in the door? So let's, like, I'm throwing down that gauntlet. I'm going to try to do that. Just get to know somebody that we don't know, get to know their name.
Yeah.
I'm down.
All right. Raise your hand. How many need a quick break before we get to the other section that we were trying to get to today? All right. So let's take a really quick break, come back in, and I'll try to quickly as I can go through flyering. It's really simple. It's not nearly as scary as it sounds, but I do want to try to get to that. So we got 20 minutes before my 3 o'clock time is ended. I want to be respectful of that. So let's take a really quick break and come back as soon as you can. If you want to, while we're breaking, come up and look at the information I have up here. I can talk to you about it.
We can just
Break's over.
Yeah.
They don't have any church.
I'm sure there'll be a few people who kind of come back in, but I got to Wendy and we had a great conversation. So we're running late. Luckily, what I have to talk about when it comes to door hangers is not nearly as
in a 4-lane
intensity, I guess.
Yeah.
How many people have door knocked? What's that like? Door knock?
Intimidating.
Back in
Intimidating.
the day, I didn't have a care. I was young.
Well, you were carrying a gun, geez.
Well, 2 of them.
Yeah.
It was grueling.
When was the last time you had somebody come and knock on your door?
Last month.
Last month? What was it for?
Something was back car.
What are they trying to sell?
It was a young girl selling, college girl selling books.
Girl Scouts.
Solar panels.
They're all afraid to come to our house.
The last couple of people who've come to my house have been contractors of some sort, trying to sell things. You don't see it very often, because door-to-door sales is just not a thing, really, anymore. And it doesn't work very well. I've been a Kirby vacuum salesman. Kirby and Rainbow still do that as their primary or only form of marketing. I get it, but you come in 20 years ago, somebody knock on your door, you invite them in, you had a special cake made for them, and it was, everyone was excited. Somebody's here. You come and knock on my door, everyone hits the ground. If I don't assume it's an Amazon package, right? We hit the ground, we're quiet, it's like, who did you invite over? Right? If you don't have my cell phone number, and you don't text me from the driveway, hey, I'm coming up the walk, right? I want to be warned before you even come to my door, right? Door knocking today, culturally, is dead. I know there's some people who will hold on to it. When I was in AIM, there was an old couple who were like, we have to knock on 300 doors now in order to get one Bible study, but we still do it. I'm like, all right. But it's been dead for a while. What we're talking about is not door knocking. We're talking about door hanging or passing out of brochures and information. Because we're seeking, right, we're talking large net. We're trying to get out to as many people marketing. There's basically two ways you can do it. You can try a mailing, right, where we pay the postal service to deliver something that we printed, or you do it the old-fashioned way where you go out and you actually put something on people's door. There's a couple different ways you can do it. These are door-hanging bags. The advantage to this is you can have an invitation, you can have an informational, a business card, a pin, and some treats, right? And you can have a lot of things that you kind of put there more as a gift. I like this concept. These come in packs of 100. Obviously, if we do this kind of door hanging, it requires us to fill them and stuff them, which is work, right? And it comes with its set of challenges. The door hangers, as they traditionally are, normally come with the hole punched out, and then there is a perforated line somewhere where you can then tear it, and you can then get it around a larger doorknob, or with some of the smaller ones you can slide it around, and then that just hangs on the door. So it has, some sort of an invitation, come to our community barbecue, and then it has additional information on the back, and it's limited to that. The other form would be something that's printed this size or something in a similar fashion, where you then just fold it up, right? You try to slide that into the door jamb, or you slide it into the door jamb in some form like that. That is the cheapest by far method, because then you can print these by the hundreds. It's just the cost of printing, and then you just go out and you stick it in. You don't have to buy the high quality paper and the already cut out hole and all those things. The other method is to take something like this with a door hanger, or to drill a hole in the corner where you then can put a rubber band, and you just put the rubber band in and you do that tie. Right, I meant to go grab a rubber band, but I don't have one with me. You can tie it and then you can stick it around the doorknob. That's really secure. I guess the final way to do that would be with a sticker, where you actually peel something off the back, or you take a small piece of tape and you stick it to somebody's door. My problem with that is I don't want to take paint off somebody's door. That's going to leave a negative impression. Yeah, so you don't want to do something like that. Though I listened to one guy make an interesting point. If you hang this on a door, what do you see? Do not disturb, right? If you take a sticker, right, you stick it on somebody's door. FedEx was here. I have a package for you. I have information that you need, right? So there is something to be said for the psychology of walking up and seeing something stuck to your door, especially if it's designed not to take paint away. So those are basically the different informational ways of doing that. We're just trying to give out information, right? So as we're walking around the neighborhood, you'll have a big old stack of informationals, whether it be these or something like this, and you're just walking along and you're putting that over the doorknob, you're sticking it in their door jamb so that you can give them that information. Now obviously when you're walking through a community, there are going to be people who are out working in their yard. There's going to be people who are working up in their garage. There's going to be somebody who has their door open for some reason. There's going to be somebody who has their screen door shut and their main door open. And you're going to end up talking to people. The goal is not to talk to people with door hanging or flyering a neighborhood, but we're not seeking to avoid it. So when we have an opportunity to talk to somebody, we're going to take that opportunity. But once again, we're not going to try to give them the 5-step plan, right? We're not going to try to evangelize them. in 30-second communication, right? Something to the effect of, hello, my name is Michael Bice with the Loveland Church of Christ. We're just out flyering your neighborhood today, inviting you to our community cookout. I won't take any more of your time, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. Right? And just hand them a piece of paper if they have a question. Great. If they say no thank you, say, all right, that's fine. Right? And just leave it with a positive connection. It's really that simple. You're there to answer questions if they have them. You're seeking to be kind. You're seeking to be respectful, but you're not seeking to force anything. A few things to keep in mind. Stay on the sidewalk. Don't cut across the grass. Try not to open doors if you don't have to. Right? Screen doors. Try to leave those on the external doors. You don't want to be seen as breaking in or invading somebody's privacy. Often people have the door bell ringers, so they have you on video, so be respectful. Sometimes they can hear you while you're standing there on the facility, so don't be talking negative about their decoration or how they're, a Bronco fan or something like that. You're not going to make any friends. So things like that. Being respectful. Don't get rained out, right? Be mindful of the weather. We don't want to litter, right? So if we're going to do this, we don't want to do it on a day that's going to have 90-mile-an-hour wind gusts. We don't want to do it on a day that's going to rain and everything's going to get soaked, especially if they're out of town for the weekend. We want to find a window where there's some good weather, and ultimately be friendly. When it comes to rules, by and large, most places are okay with door hangers and information dropping. If we give you a section, we've made sure that it is okay and that you have a green light legally to do that. It is beneficial sometimes if you roll up and you park your car that you call the non-emergency number of that jurisdiction and say, hey, we're with the Loveland Church of Christ. We're out flying in the neighborhood. My car is parked on, whatever street. We're just out giving out some information. If somebody calls, that's what we're doing. And that just kind of gives the police department a heads up of, somebody's not trying to break into 60 homes. And they don't have to send out SWAT because, I was on some old lady's door and she was suspicious. It just kind of gives them a heads up because everything that we're doing is legal. When it comes to a no soliciting sign on somebody's door, there's a lot of debate. Some HOAs require everybody to put them up. And they just have a blanket rule. Not every homeowner is agreeing to that. It's just a blanket thing. From what I read, I'm kind of the opinion that we're not selling anything technically. We're just leaving information. It's basically hand delivering a note. And you're not soliciting technically. If you're not comfortable with that, skip it. If you come up to a place, in Hempstead I had a lot of places that had gates. You couldn't get to the front door. I just left it on the gate. I was not going to go onto their property. If somebody is very clear, I don't want you, respect that. You can be respectful of that and just leave on. Some people say, yes, if information giving is the same as soliciting, and be respectful of that. I'm fine with that. I have a no soliciting sign on my house. That was there when I moved in. I have so many people who completely ignore that, who are trying to sell me things. I want to sell you windows. I want to sell you siding. I want to sell you, a security system for your home. They ignore it, right? I don't know. Did you have an opinion on that? You kind of...
Yeah, if there's a no soliciting sign, move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Because it could create a very negative, and lump us in with contractors that we want to deal with, so.
Michael, there are some people delivering a lot, myself, that actually will have no soliciting, no pamphlets, no this, no that. Definitely don't put a pamphlet on them.
Yes.
Or it will really irritate, trust me, you will irritate them.
I'm not putting one of yours.
Better watch out.
Yeah.
And I would also suggest if the gate is closed, unless you're like me and you know every person on your route,
Yep.
and you know who's got dogs and who doesn't,
Yep.
don't go in there.
Yeah. I have been snipped. It's not fun. It's not a piece of paper. Inviting someone to something is not worth getting snipped. It's not worth getting in trouble with somebody. If you decide that I'm going to go and solicit to their house despite their no soliciting sign or whatever, and they get onto you, just be apologetic and say, I just really wanted you to know about the gospel. But we don't want to present a negative view to people. We want to be very respectful. I have definitely skipped houses that say no soliciting because of that. From what I read, it was kind of a gray area, but it's definitely an area where we want to be respectful of people, right? If someone says, hey, I don't want it, that's fine.
Have a great day.
Just have a great day. We want to leave that positive impression. So if you're not comfortable with it, definitely don't do it. I'm not going to tell you to go to a house that says no soliciting, but I'm also not going to tell you to definitely skip it, though the elders won't.
The other one is if there's packages on that porch, best not to go up to that door because pirates stealing those things.
Unless they have a ring.
Yeah.
They might not be home anyway if they have people for packages.
And you'll go up to some houses that it's obvious no one has been there in quite some time. But yeah, you want to avoid the appearance of impropriety, right? Now this brings us back to going as a pair, right? You can do two sides of the road, you can do it quicker. You then have the safety and numbers of people being with you. You have the witness of saying, hey, they weren't taking nothing off your porch. Right? I was here with them. If you are invited in, you definitely have then the security. I would not recommend you go into anybody's home, okay, especially if it's just a group of ladies. I will leave that up to you because you're big people and you can make those decisions yourself. But you definitely don't want to go into somebody's home by yourself, right? So if you get invited into somebody's house and they want to have a Bible study there on the spot, great. But only do that if you get somebody with you and you feel confident in the fact that you're in a safe environment. Texting somebody, letting them know where you're at. Take those precautions. We don't live in the 1920s anymore, so do be very, very wise when it comes to those sorts of things.
I want to address the rings again.
Yep.
So understand something too. It's not always the ring on the door that you got to be careful of. It's the ring that's in the neighbor's bush that's watching you. Anything you can and say will be used against you in the court of the internet. They will record what you said and they will put it on the internet and it'll be all over. Hey, this was a Church of Christ member calling my neighbor's house a dump. Well, it might have been a dump. But be careful because everything's on camera. Even if you don't see the camera. So we've lost drivers, not my company, but other contractors have lost drivers who said something, and it was on the Pittsburgh called us, national headquarters. Hey, this is on YouTube. You're a guy. So just letting you know. Be careful.
Definitely be respectful. You're trying to build rapport, right? And a loss of rapport is not worth the negative press, right? So just be very, very respectful. Yes, Melissa.
Is it just a known fact that mailboxes are off limits?
It's a good point. Yes.
It is a federal offense, actually.
Yes.
To put anything in a mailbox that hasn't gone through the mail system.
Oh.
And that also includes or hanging on the outside of the mailbox.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, so you don't hang it on a mailbox, right? That's federal property, basically. You don't tamper with mail. You don't put things, that have not gone through the mail service, so make sure that you don't do that. Like I said, when it comes to putting these up, there's already a hole. You slide it around or you tear it and then you put it up on their door. If you can tuck that into the weather stripping so it's not flying around, all the better. If you're working with just a piece of paper, you can not crease it, but you can normally fit that into most door jambs or screen doors, especially on the non-opening side where it's got the hinge. You can normally fit that between the hinge. Or you can turn it around the other way and you can slide it in either direction within that door jamb so that is some really good ways to attach just pieces of paper. I'm really a fan of the rubber band ideas. You got to stack them in one arm, and then you're able to reach in, grab a rubber band, and put it on as you're walking to the next house. You know, but we're not looking to get in trouble, right? There will be plenty of people who get offended that anyone, you know, put any information towards them, and they're just going to call anyway. I get that, but we're trying as best we can to put out a positive perspective. Are there any other questions before I go over the plan of flyering just while we're here real quick? All right, so I drew a map, a 3-mile square map around the building. Extends down to 287, kind of following right around 287. It almost goes out to County Road 21 and up to 14th Street. So that's about a 3-mile circle. I figured out about 17 neighborhoods, 19 neighborhoods that were easily identifiable. Some of those are pretty small. I think I have 13 pieces of paper in here. Some have 2 routes. So the goal would be to have people sign up to flyer. We pick a day, and if you didn't come on that day, then you would be given a piece of information to then take out when it was convenient for you. Make sure you go as a pair, that you have that safety, that you're able to do that in a group, and then you just go out, you take your map, and you make sure that you hit all the houses in that area. You know, in theory, some of these would be very close to each other. I probably could redraw these maps and maybe redraw these maps after putting this together to include some larger sections, or we could break these up into much smaller sections. But that's kind of how that would be done. On the bottom here, I have an area for notes, especially since this would be the first time in a while that we've done some of these, for you to put notes. Hey, you know, leave this house alone, or, you know, there's no houses in this area, right? Your information was bad. I'll try to drive some of these before we actually do this. But that way you can kind of have some feedback so that we can do this better the next time. So basically it'd be a sheet of paper with the addresses or the region on it, and then you just get a piece of information that you could then take out to then flyer at your convenience or on the date and time we would set. All right, I went through that really quickly. Any questions? Any feedback? Any thoughts?
Do you have a target date, Michael?
We're still working on that, I believe. I think that tentatively, we're thinking possibly, don't hold me to any of this. This is off the record, even though it's online. Not official. We're thinking maybe a July picnic as a congregation on a Sunday, maybe around July 10th, something like that, that we could then get information out. The rule of thumb is about 3 weeks before, a month to 2 weeks before, you want to get that information out. You know, so we just see how far we can get. So that'd be kind of the general idea.
Well, you might add that the idea here is not just to get information about the church, but also an invitation to an event. So
Right.
we're combining those, and it gives people some interest.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
Right, so that's one of the benefits to a bag like this, is we're able to give them something that is about us. It's about an event that they could come to, and it's also some gifts that maybe they would actually find beneficial, right? Maybe I don't like, you know, any of your paper stuff, but, you know, I can use a free pen with a stylus on it, and I'm a fan of chocolate,
Can't use
right?
that in the summer. Can't do chocolate in the summer.
Yeah, that would be true. So we don't want to leave anyone a hot mess as well, so I'm just throwing some stuff together. Thinking through exactly what we could put in there is definitely still in progress. These are not official things, but you're welcome to come up and kind of look at some of this information we have up here. Trying to design a trifold to kind of give to first-time guests that we can hand to people and say, hey, you know, this is some information about us and your first time here. Can I show you around? Can I show you your class? You know, come and sit with me. So that's kind of some information up here that we have for folks. You're welcome to rifle through that, pick my brain some more. But we're past 3. I appreciate your time and your attention. If you have questions, let me know. And please fill out a survey so I know the thing that annoyed you the most, going over time, talking about simple things, all that. Let me know, and we'll try to make this, if they happen again, more beneficial. Thank you all.
I can't get up.
Yeah.